Hello and welcome to this edition of Rise Up with Rebecca Seawright on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. I'm your host, Assemblymember Rebecca Seawright, serving the Upper East Side, Yorkville, and Roosevelt Island, and hosting tonight from my East 79th Street District Community Office. Tonight, we have a very special guest, Coach Ryan Martin, who is the Director for Inclusive and Adaptive Sports for the City University of New York, known as CUNY. Coach Martin has been coming to Albany this legislative session to rally and advocate for additional funding for the cost of living COLA increase, for direct support professionals and funding for students with disabilities at New York's public colleges and institutions. He is a devout advocate, and we are so happy to have his strong support. He is the director of the CUNY, City University of New York, Adaptive Sports Program. His portfolio includes a men's and women's wheelchair basketball teams, as well as an emerging wheelchair tennis and track program. And I also hope pickleball will be in there soon. Recently, I attended one of the wheelchair basketball games at Queens College, and the women's team is one of only 7 that exist in the nation. And I can hardly wait to go back and watch more sports events. It was such a fun evening. Ryan has been recognized as the 2022 College Coach of the Year by the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, USOPC. The CUNY Adaptive Sports Program is the only intercollegiate adaptive sports program on the East Coast. Congratulations, Coach, on this big award. Ryan is also the Executive Director of the International NPO, the Ryan Martin Foundation, with a mission to help youth and adult athletes with disabilities live independent, impassioned, productive, and full lives through sports training, mentoring, and education. He also serves as the president of the National Wheelchair Basketball Association and helps oversee the USA High Performance Program, which includes both men's and women's wheelchair basketball Paralympic teams. In that role, he manages key relationships with stakeholders such as corporate sponsors Nike and Toyota. He currently plays for the NWBE, back-to-back reigning national champions, the New York Rolling Knicks. Previously, Ryan played professional basketball in Madrid, Spain, Paris, France for 10 seasons. He is working to complete a master's degree in disability studies at the CUNY School of Professional Studies. Coach Ryan Martin, we welcome you to the show today. Tell us a little bit about your career and the adaptive sports program at CUNY.
Yeah, well, so first of all, Assembly members here, right? Thank you for having me on today. It's a pleasure to get a chance to chat again and kind of share the story of what we're working on here at CUNY from an adaptive sports perspective. So I'm an individual that has played wheelchair basketball most of my life and have had the good fortune to play, in college and receive a scholarship to go do so. And it's kind of opened the doors for me. So in my professional career, I've always wanted to create other modalities for other individuals with disabilities to use adaptive sports, more specifically wheelchair basketball, to carve out their goals and their objectives, and one of the things I think is, imperative is, for our individuals with disabilities to get that higher ed degree, that allows them to be competitive in the workforce. And so, CUNY is an opportunity for us to really provide an opportunity for our students with disabilities that's commensurate to the experience that their non-disabled peers would get, in the sense of a top-notch education and also a sport outlet as well from an extracurricular perspective.
Well, that's fabulous. And I know that you came up to Albany earlier this legislative session and will be returning back on May 15th in the well of the Capitol for Disability Awareness Day, where we'll be taking up a package of legislation and passing it on the floor that day. And we'll be so honored to have you in the chamber and recognize that day for your big award as Coach of the Year. You coach the CUNY Adaptive Sports Program, the only intercollegiate adaptive sports program on the East Coast, and your teams have accomplished so much this season. What do you hope to accomplish for future seasons in regard to promoting inclusivity and more accessibility in intercollegiate sports?
Yeah, so I think CUNY is a tremendous model, of higher education, and our critical mass of students with disabilities. We have roughly 5,000 students that we know of that have, registered with our Office of Students with Disabilities with a mobility impairment, right? And so that generally is the population that we're looking to design programming for. So I think we've just reached the tip of the iceberg on what we can do in providing this opportunity for current students and then like future generations of youth with disabilities. I have to give a lot of credit to our current group of student athletes who are doing just as well in the classroom as they've done on the basketball court. It's going to be a busy graduation season. I get to go to 5 different, college campus graduations. And I think that's what it's absolutely all about. I think for these students to have this opportunity to do what they love and trade that in for a college degree and make them more competitive in that New York City job environment is really critical, and I think these type of programs really kind of show the ability of individuals with disabilities to kind of be successful beyond what people might have envisioned, stereotypically. And so I'm really honored to have coached that first group of students who have really kind of set the foundation for a program for years to come, and excited to see the amount of, youth with disabilities across the city that now get to see this as a potential home as a student athlete.
Well, that's terrific. And also tell us some about your foundation, the Ryan Martin Foundation, RMF's mission, I know, is to help youth and adult athletes with disabilities live independent, productive, and full lives through sports training, mentoring, and education. How has adaptive sports impacted the lives of your student athletes long term? And tell us a little bit about your foundation.
Yeah, the foundation was something I started in my 20s, and I was living overseas. I was living in Madrid, and I was playing basketball full time. And I would get these opportunities to speak at some able-bodied basketball camps. And I just said to myself, I was like, man, it would be great for me to give this same talk that I'm going to give to these 50 kids to 50 kids that have disabilities and know the challenges that I dealt with growing up. And so that was kind of the rationale behind it. And it's kind of grown. We support a program in Connecticut annually that competes nationally. We also support a program in Madrid, Spain, where I was living at the time when I started the nonprofit. And it's just to give kids that opportunity to, find that place where they belong. We talk about how sports is a great vehicle for people's self-esteem and confidence and leadership and teamwork. And these are all skills that we want members of our disabled community to have as well. And so that's always been the goal. I don't anticipate trying to make the next professional wheelchair basketball player, the next Paralympian. But what I do want them to do is take those intangible skills that they have and that they learn from playing sports and apply it to something that interests them and find their passion. And what we try to do with under the umbrella of my foundation is provide supports in the areas where historically youth with disabilities might struggle, such as we have IEP 504 advocacy supports for the parents, so that they know what their rights are going into the school system and what services are available. So what we tried to make was like kind of a holistic transitional academy within our foundation programming to support youth with disabilities and, accomplishing those goals that lead them to college and, hopefully long-term gainful employment.
That's terrific. It's so inspiring and wonderful that you have started this foundation. How many years were you overseas playing professional basketball?
So there's no professional leagues in the U.S. So after finishing my undergraduate degree, I went overseas and just kind of expected it to be a 1 year thing. And it turned out to be 10. And, sometimes that's the way life works, right? And so I spent 8 years in Spain and then 2 in France, and got a chance to travel all of Europe. And I really, what I think was really a humbling experience is, I'm a child of the ADA, right? Like I started my K through 12 education after, Section 504, and, inclusion in education wasn't just a buzzword. It was, legally mandated. So I got to see the best of what our country can provide. And living in other countries where there's not necessarily an ADA, there isn't a Section 504, and getting to experience, some of the struggles that, individuals with disabilities would experience around the world, really kind of humbled me to the opportunities I have here. And then also to further create more opportunities for other individuals as well.
How do we encourage other people to be supportive and to get involved? I know Speaker Hasty appointed me as the Assembly Committee Chair for People with Disabilities. I was very excited with that appointment. I have an aunt, my only aunt, who was born with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and I miss her every single day. And so it's very personal to me to be able to chair this committee in the state legislature, where we will be taking up a number of bills on the 15th, as well as the Equal Rights Amendment that I sponsored, that we had its second passage, which prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities, our elderly, women, and so many broad categories, the LGBT community. So we're doing great things in Albany, passing legislation, but there is always more to be done. So how do you recommend people get involved and be supportive and really learn about the issues?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of tremendous, nonprofit organizations and community organizations that are really trying to, build up the profile of some of these issues and make some of the issues that have been long running in the disabled community more mainstream. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to get involved at a grassroots level to support different programming in different ventures. So I encourage people to, find what they're really passionate about, because I know, like we've talked about my nonprofit, but I know there's numerous nonprofits throughout the city that are working to make things better for individuals in the disabled community, whether it's, from an adaptive sports modality or, many other different avenues. And so I think if that's a passion for people to just get involved, because, the nonprofit structure relies on a lot of, like-minded folks who are willing to support great causes.
Great. And tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and who was your mentor. Did you have mentors? I know Dr. Chris Rosa, former vice chancellor at CUNY, is one of my special mentors. And what was your first introduction to the adaptive sports program?
Yeah, so I had the pleasure, I consider Dr. Chris Rosa a friend and a mentor as well. I wouldn't be in this situation working for CUNY, and really, I think I have my dream job, right? Every single day I get to do exactly what I want to do. So I owe a really debt of gratitude that Dr. Rosa saw the skills in me to give me this opportunity. So Dr. Rosa would be foremost on that. I just think what really kind of drew me to CUNY versus other universities was just the amount of students that you could impact, right? And I knew it would be a challenge, and it is a challenge day to day. But I think the critical mass of disability that we have across the 5 boroughs and CUNY's unique system, I think if you could, that drew me to wanting to work in New York, like the challenge of trying to do something special, because, if you can do it there, you're creating, generational change across the city. And so I'm always somebody who wants a challenge. And so professionally, I thought that was the best challenge. But I would say, Dr. Rosa, without a doubt, was tremendously influential in that.
And in your early years, when you first got your introduction to sports, how did you develop your passion, and who first introduced you to the wheelchair basketball and inspired you that you went all the way to Madrid, Spain, and Paris, France to play and to compete? And so, how did you develop that passion, and who was your first introduction to the sport?
Yeah, so great question. So I'll go backwards a little bit. So I grew up in a family of 12. My parents adopted kids with special needs. And so my parents had 4 biological kids, and I was adopted one of 8. And so like my first introduction to sport was playing sports with my siblings, right? And, I don't think I've played a more competitive game than, going up against your siblings in the backyard playing different sports. And so that's where I really found the love for it. And I think as a youth with a disability, I got involved in playing wheelchair basketball because it was the first thing where I stuck out for all the right reasons in school. Previously it was, Ryan, the individual with a disability, or Ryan in a wheelchair. And then it transformed to, well, Ryan can really play basketball, or Ryan can really shoot the ball. And so as a kid, you're always looking for your place to fit in. And so I would really have to thank my parents for really kind of creating that opportunity. And then, I probably owe a lot of credit to my professional career, to my siblings beating me up a little bit, to get me ready for the tougher times abroad.
That's great. And did you grow up in New York State?
No, I actually grew up in Connecticut. And so that's so I grew up there, and, most of my family is scattered in the New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts area now.
And playing team sports, what has that taught you? I know a lot of the successful leaders today credit team sports in high school, and with being able to work in a work setting and in the environment with the lessons that they learned playing team sports. What has that taught you in your professional career that you've learned from being a part of a team? And what do you attribute as your top leadership skill?
I think the thing that sports has taught me the most is working really, really hard to prepare for something, in the sweat equity, and then still not getting to where you want to go. Right. I think oftentimes, we expect, this result because we put in this effort. So I think, the fun begins when you fail, right? Like, how do you dig yourself out? And I think sports, gives you a chance to really, test, your level of fortitude and your character to kind of continue. So I think there's a lot of skills, as leadership and teamwork and ability to communicate within diverse groups, I think I would attribute to, but also just not being successful. Has probably been the number one thing in what do you do when that happens, right? Because I think everybody has these beautiful plans, but then, like, hey, when something goes awry, how do you work from there?
Mm-hmm. And what would you encourage your students to do when they lose a game, and or they're disappointed with their score and the number of shots that they've made? What do you encourage them to do to be prepared and to go forward and compete?
I always say you just have to continually put in the work, right? There is no shortcut. I think we always look for, different ways to be successful. And I think everybody will tell you there's no just quick fix to it, whether that's the sporting realm or whether that's the academic realm or, professionally. Mm-hmm. So with our student athletes, we just, we talk about the value of sweat equity and the value of, okay, hey, it wasn't your time to win this time, but like, what are you doing to change that outcome?
Mm-hmm. And so are there some more games scheduled with the CUNY Adaptive Sports, or is it the end of the season or the middle of the season? I know I so enjoyed attending and watching you coach the team out at Queens College, who played a team from Long Island. So what does the schedule look like in the season?
So right now we're doing track and field on campus. So some of our student athletes are participating in that as we try to launch that program a little bit. Our basketball season, we're more in the off season. So students are doing off season workouts to prep for next season. And then we'll offer a couple summer camps throughout the summer. So our program kind of shifts and does more outward outreach to building adaptive sports within the city for youth, in the kind of that DOE K-12 population as well, or like recently injured folks, whether they're veterans or individuals who just acquired their disability later in life. And so we start doing more like adaptive sports camps to try to like increase the number of individuals in the city playing the sport in the summertime. And then in September, when everybody's back in class, we ramp up for, the following season again.
Great. Well, I certainly look forward to attending more games. And
yeah, I'll make sure you get a schedule for sure.
Yes, and you go on the road. You recently traveled. Was it to Georgia where you had a game recently?
Yeah, we've traveled we've traveled quite a bit. There's only a handful of collegiate programs around the country. And so, that could mean, traveling down to Alabama, over to Texas, to, Illinois or Wisconsin. And this program is pretty unique because it's generally intertwined within a Division I university. And, CUNY being more of D2, D3 campuses and things of that nature. So a lot of travel, but I think our student athletes really enjoy that, getting a chance to, experience other parts of the country for sure.
Mm-hmm. I know in Albany, I sit on the higher education committee, and we had the SUNY chancellor, Dr. John King, come talk to the committee. And one of the questions as the chair of the People with Disabilities Committee that I raised was, what were they doing in the adaptive sports arena? And that CUNY has this wonderful program with Coach Ryan Martin that should be replicated around the country. And SUNY, our State University of New York, is a 64 campus system. And so I would love to see the program funded and started at the State University of New York. City University of New York, under the guidance of Chancellor Felo Matos Rodriguez, is doing a wonderful job. And but let me ask you, do you recruit students to come to the City University of New York specifically to play in the adaptive sports program, or do you seek out students that are already admitted and enrolled at CUNY?
A little bit of both. It's a relatively new program. We're going to embark on our third season now. So now we've really gotten into the place where we can recruit externally to New York. And next fall, we'll have a lot of student athletes coming to New York from, other states, within the region, and some from down south as well. So, I think we're doing a really good job when somebody from outside of New York is coming to the program and wants to be a part of it. And so I'm really excited as we continue to grow and continue to expand the program to such a level that, it attracts nationally and internationally as well.
How many students at CUNY do you have been enrolled in the program?
So we have 35 student athletes within our various program. We'll add several more that'll come in as freshmen. We'll have a few that are graduating as well, which is always it's bittersweet because you can hope that they can stay in the program forever, but you're also excited that they're taking their degree. And, both of the two students that are graduating from our program already have jobs lined up, so it's great to see, because that's the whole concept, right? We want to invest in our students with disabilities in higher education, so they're able to make that next step, right? And, we always say, like, we want them to become taxpayers and not tax consumers. And I think when they can take that degree and do that, and so part of our program is we're constantly, trying to link our students with different internships throughout the summer months, or, part-time jobs, whether it's through the city or through the state, to get them that work experience, because, we're getting a lot of students who now maybe have that degree, but have no experience on that resume. And so we're trying to solve for that as well during the year, get them those internships and get them plugged in with, all of these companies in the city, that are DE&I focused and, recognize disability as part of that DE&I component.
Excellent. Well, that's terrific. And I know our community office and our legislative office in Albany, and we're always looking for interns. And so please pass the word on to have them contact our office. And we have a lot of outdoor events coming up with street fairs and Roosevelt Island Arts Day. And so we have a lot of very meaningful internships. And if you have students that are interested in political science and government, what better way than to do an internship in your legislator's office? So please reach out. I'm a CUNY Law School graduate and a big fan of our public higher education institutions and systems. So I want to thank you, Coach Ryan Martin, for being our special guest today on Rise Up with Rebecca Seawright on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And thank you for speaking with us this evening, for your outstanding leadership and advocacy. And I want to thank all of our viewers for tuning in tonight. And remember, May 15th is Disability Awareness Day at our state capitol. And we encourage you to zoom into legislative session, see your government in action, and to make a difference. Thank you again for joining us this evening.